Go ahead, ask your question again.
So I know to do it, but I wanted to know why, when crossing ourselves, sometimes we touch the ground.
Chad, you wanted to answer this question, so I'm gonna let you
Isn't it
answer.
because we can't, historically we can't prostrate on Sundays, so what they would do instead was touch the ground instead?
That's part of the reason.
Okay.
So when you cross yourself, you're doing what's known as a little prostration of a time,
Okay.
right? Because in the early church, they would just fully go right to the ground. You notice when you see like Muslims and stuff like that on TV, or if you've ever been to a mosque, you'll see them, they'll go completely to the ground, and they make sure that they have enough room to do that. Who do you think they got that from?
From us.
They got that from us. They stole a lot of things from us. Okay? But in particular, we used to just completely, fully prostrate ourselves and such like that, because we're basically, as you heard back in September, right, elevation of the cross, we're bowing before God. We, in that sense, we fully bow down before Him, right? So you go down to the ground completely and you get back up. It's all part of that, sure. The act of crossing oneself came about because we used to completely cross, one cross and completely go to the ground. That act happened because as the church grew throughout the world, so did that, where you would fill up churches, right, with people. Well, you started being next to each other. We talk about space in this church and how it's starting to become an issue, right? You get people starting to be scrunched in with each other and people in front of you. What's going to happen when you try to prostrate when someone's in front of you? You're going to bump into them and you're not going to be able to do it. So the people started just crossing themselves, right? And they would bow down with their hand and things like that as an abridged version, if you will, to that more than anything. But that's where that sort of originated into. The touching of the ground thing is, from my understanding, and I could be wrong about this one, I may be wrong about this. My understanding of it, the touching part has to do with kind of what Chad said. You're emulating that aspect of it too. But I've also heard it and understood as that you're reminding yourself that through the cross, that death awaits you. And it's a reminder to death. And that, I will be on the ground and I will raise, because what happens when you touch the ground? You raise back up. So you're reminding yourself of the resurrection. That's how I've heard it. I believe, and I know there's a church fund that talked about it, because I think that's where I read it at, right? But it's that idea of the bow down before God, to rise up, bow down in death and rise up in life, in that sense. So that's the version on it. Now, you will hear people when they go to get a blessing from a priest, they'll do this. They'll do the whole bow down with their hand like that in the same way to get a blessing. That's another one of those, depends on your school of thought on the matter. Because technically speaking, you're not supposed to do that. When you get a blessing from a priest or a bishop, you just put your hand in and get a blessing. Okay? As such. But some will do that same thing when they're doing it. And it's that same sort of prostration, because you would be greeting somebody in that sense. When you get a blessing from the bishop or a priest, you're like greeting them and getting that sense of it. So the long story short of your answer is, why do we cross ourselves? Why do we do that prostration and such like that? It's because we're bowing before God. I like the theological explanation of you're reminding yourself of death on the ground and you're rising up with the resurrection. Okay? That's my perspective of seeing it. I like that perspective on it. So, but good answer from Chad. And does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.